You can save 400 gallons of water a year with a bag of foam tubes and a pair of scissors. No plumber, no permit, no pipes cut, nothing drained. I timed my own kitchen tap last winter. 51 seconds from cold to actually hot. 51 seconds of clean, treated, paid-for water going straight down the drain while I stood there waiting to wash a pan. Do that 4 or 5 times a day, every day, and you can work out for yourself where 400 gallons comes from. I'm going to show you exactly what this is, what it costs, which pipes matter and which ones don't, and the one thing about it that almost nobody tells you. The thing that decides whether you save 400 gallons or whether you spend an afternoon under your house for almost nothing. Last January, I was lying on my back in a crawl space with a torch in my teeth, and I put my hand on the hot line running from the water heater. Warm. Properly warm 20 minutes after anybody had run a tap. That is heat I paid for, sitting in a copper pipe under a cold floor, quietly leaking into the dirt. And here's the thing that made me feel like an idiot. I'd been down there half a dozen times over the years. I'd looked straight at that pipe. It never once occurred to me that it was costing me anything, that right there is the whole video, and I'll come back to it. Here's precisely what pipe insulation does. It slows down how fast the water sitting in your pipes gives up its heat. That's it. That's the entire trick. There are 2 separate things it buys you, and people usually only know about one. The first is the obvious one. When hot water is moving through a pipe on its way to your tap, it loses heat to the pipe, and the pipe loses it to the air. Wrap the pipe, and less of that heat escapes on the journey. The second is bigger, and it's the one that actually saves the water. When you turn the tap off, the pipe stays full. That water sits there and slowly cools down to whatever the temperature is around it. So the next time you open the tap, all of that cooled water has to be run off before hot water arrives. Insulate the pipe, and that standing water stays hot far longer. Come back an hour later, and instead of a pipe full of cold water, you have a pipe full of warm water and a much shorter wait. That shorter wait is the 400 gallons. Now here's precisely what it does not do. And I want to say this plainly because people buy the foam expecting magic. It does not make hot water arrive instantly. The water in that pipe still has to be pushed out before the hot arrives, and insulation does not change how long the pipe is. If you have 100 feet of pipe between your water heater and your bathroom, you're still going to move 100 feet of water before anything hot reaches you. What insulation changes is the temperature of that water when it arrives at your hand. On an insulated line used regularly, the weight drops noticeably because the water in the pipe never got properly cold. On a line that hasn't been used since yesterday morning, it will still be a weight. Everything useful about this comes from that distinction. Cost. Foam pipe sleeve comes in 6-foot lengths, split down one side with a self-adhesive seam, and it runs about $2 to $4 a length depending on the size. A bag of 10 is $25 to $35. A roll of foil tape is 8 or 10. You want a tape measure and a pair of scissors or a utility knife, and that is the entire tool list. So call it $30 to $40 in one afternoon. I spent a long career maintaining buildings for people who would not spend money on anything they couldn't see, and the water heater cupboard was the perfect example of that. We had a block where every tenant complained the hot water took forever, and every year somebody suggested replacing the water heaters. Nobody ever went and looked at the pipes. When I finally did, the runs were bare copper going through an unheated void, in a building where that void got genuinely cold in winter. Every one of those pipes was a radiator heating a space nobody ever went into 24 hours a day. $30 of foam per unit, an afternoon each, and the complaints stopped. Nobody ever thanked me for that either. That's the trouble with this sort of work. When it's done right, nothing happens. So I'm going to walk you through it in order. Which pipes to do first, which ones are a waste of your time, the 2 mistakes that make it useless, the safety line you do not cross, and the honest limits. And then I'm going to give you the part that ought to annoy you, which is that this is not new, not clever, and not hidden. Every plumber knows it. It's in the code guidance for new builds. There's just no money in it. Nobody can sell you a service contract on a foam tube. There's no annual inspection, no part number, no call-out fee. A plumber can fit it, but the labor costs more than the material, and there's nothing to come back for. So it doesn't get mentioned, and most people go their whole lives with bare pipes. If an old maintenance man's tricks are worth your time, hit subscribe and the thumbs up. It's the only way I know that you want more of them. Here's what most folks get wrong about this, and it isn't the fitting. Most folks insulate the wrong pipes. They go under the house and lag every hot line they can reach evenly from one end to the other, and they run out of foam halfway and give up. That's backwards. The pipes are not equal, and there's a clear order. Number 1 is the first several feet coming out of the top of your water heater. That is the hottest water in the system. It is standing there constantly, and the pipe is losing heat every hour of every day, whether anybody uses a tap or not. If you do nothing else, do that. Number 2, and this surprises people, is the first several feet of the cold inlet going into the water heater. Heat travels backwards up that pipe from the tank, and it sits there quietly bleeding away. It's a smaller loss than the hot side, and it's free to fix while you're already there. Number 3 is any hot run passing through an unheated space. A crawl space, an unheated basement, a garage, a void, an attic. Those are the pipes doing the real damage, because the temperature difference is huge and the space gains you nothing. Number 4 is the run to whatever fixture you use most often. For most households, that's the kitchen or the main shower, and the ones that matter least are hot pipes running inside heated walls of your living space, because the heat they lose ends up in a room you are heating anyway. Not worthless, just last. The second thing folks get wrong is the fit, and this is where people waste their afternoon. Foam sleeve is sold by pipe size, and it has to match. Too tight, and you'll fight it and split it. Too loose, and you get an air gap around the pipe that convects, which means the foam is doing far less than you think it is. Measure your pipe before you buy. 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch cover most household runs, and it is worth taking one measurement rather than guessing. Then seal it properly. The split seam has adhesive on it, so peel and press it closed along the whole length. Butt the ends of adjacent lengths tightly together and tape over the joint with foil tape. Miter the corners at elbows so the foam meets neatly and tape those too. Every gap is a place where the pipe touches the air, and a series of small gaps will quietly undo most of the benefit. And do not forget the valves and the fittings. Purpose-made covers exist, and if you cannot get them, wrap the fitting in foil-faced insulation and tape it. A bare brass valve on an insulated line is a fin, and fins are how radiators work. Now the safety line, and I am saying it here rather than at the end. If you have a gas water heater, there's a clearance around the flue and around the burner area at the bottom that the manufacturer specifies, and you do not insulate inside it. Foam near a flue is a fire risk, and blocking the air the burner needs is worse than that. Look at the label on the unit, keep well back from the flue collar, and if you are not certain, leave that section bare. Losing 6 inches of pipe is not worth the alternative. The same goes for any vent or combustion air opening. Never cover one. And a working carbon monoxide alarm in any home with a gas appliance is assumed throughout this video. Now the water heater temperature, since we are here, because this is where people go wrong in the other direction. Common guidance is around 120 degrees for household hot water. That is hot enough for washing, and it substantially reduces scald risk, which matters enormously in a house with small children or elderly relatives, and it reduces standing loss from the tank. But do not simply crank it down as far as it goes, because there is a genuine trade-off. Water. Sitting at low temperature in a tank for long periods carries a bacterial risk, which is the reason the guidance sits where it does rather than lower. Follow the guidance for your area, and if the house has anybody vulnerable in it, look at a thermostatic mixing valve at the fixture rather than dropping the tank temperature. Now the honest limits. The first is the one I have already given you. This shortens the wait, it does not remove it. If your bathroom is a long way from your water heater, insulation alone will not fix that. And the real answer there is a recirculation system, or a small point-of-use heater, both of which cost considerably more and bring their own trade-offs. The second is that your saving depends entirely on where those pipes run. A house with all its plumbing inside heated space will see a modest benefit. A house with long runs through a freezing crawl space will see a large one. Go and look before you decide what to expect. The third is that 400 gallons is a household figure, not a law. Yours depends on how many people live there, how often you draw hot water, and how long your runs are. Measure your own wait time, and you will know your own number. The fourth is that foam degrades in sunlight, so any exterior or exposed run needs a UV-resistant covering rather than bare foam. And the fifth is that this does nothing for a leak. If your hot water is genuinely taking minutes to arrive and your bills are climbing, check for a running toilet and a dripping hot tap first, because those waste more than any pipe. So this week, here's what I want you to do, and none of it costs more than a coffee. First, time your taps. Take your phone, turn on the hot tap in your kitchen, and time how long until it runs properly hot. Do the same at your main shower and at the bathroom furthest from the water heater. Write the 3 numbers down. That is your baseline, and it turns this from a vague idea into something you can measure afterwards. Second, go and put your hand on the pipe coming out of the top of your water heater, 20 minutes after anybody has used hot water. If it is warm, that is heat leaving your system continuously, and you have just found your first job. Third, measure your pipe. Wrap a piece of string around it, mark it, and take that to the store rather than guessing at the shelf. Fourth, follow your hotline as far as you can with a torch, and note every place it passes through somewhere cold. Those are your priority runs. And fifth, buy 1 bag of foam and do the water heater first. Do not try to do the whole house on day 1. Do the first 10 feet at the tank, then retime your taps a week later. Tell me in the comments what your kitchen tap timed at in seconds before you did anything. I want the number, and I want to know whether your pipes run through a cold space. I read every one of these, and that is the most useful thing anybody puts down there. because almost nobody has ever timed it, and the number is usually far worse than people guess. I'll leave you with what the old boy who trained me used to say when somebody wanted to replace something expensive. He said the water heater is almost never the problem. The problem is everything between the water heater and the tap, and nobody ever looks there because it's inconvenient and it's boring and there's nothing to sell you. Go and look. It's $30 in one afternoon, and it is sitting there costing you money right now.